Before we begin, thank you very much to Matthew T for contributing to my Patreon campaign over at patreon.com/TJOmega. All of the support helps so much in keeping this channel going and keeping the content coming. If you want to do the same, please check it out at patreon.com/TJOmega, or just, hit like or subscribe. Those are absolutely free and those help a lot too. Now, we've been talking a lot about concept figures and designs, and I kind of like those topics. Those bring up interesting things and interesting discussions. So this time, we're not going to go strictly with Beast Wars. We're going to go all over the Transformers map and take a look at 10 concepts that we never got. And while we're going to focus on whole series that we were supposed to get, or spin-offs, there are going to be a couple things that were just a one or two figure thing here or there. Things that I personally just found really interesting that was going to be a toy and never quite happened. So let us begin with 10 Transformer concepts that we never got, and we're going to start with a ridiculous set of concepts for Megatron that I thought would have been so fun. So the first one is actually kind of obvious. It is a Megatron, fully G1 Megatron with the gun mode, with an interesting thing on top because it also transforms into Galvatron. That seems like a very basic, that seems like an obvious concept, right? A Megatron that can turn into Galvatron, that should have happened by now. And apparently in G1, somebody tried to design that to actually happen. The thing in G1 is they were very hesitant to go back and revisit old characters, so things like that probably never made it past the concept point because they didn't want to go rehash characters that already stopped selling well. And on a similar note, they also had designed a Skywarp toy that had a Megatron mode. It's a full Skywarp robot mode and vehicle mode, but for whatever reason, it could turn into Megatron. So, odds are, this was originally supposed to be Starscream, which even then, that wouldn't make sense either. But Skywarp's colors would fit Megatron better if one turned into the other. I mean, that's the assumption. There's no, concrete evidence of that. This is just something that appeared in a Generations book one day, and it's a fascinating little piece of tech. I would have been thoroughly entertained by this, even though it makes no sense whatsoever. At number 9, we're looking at one that actually technically is happening right now as I record this video. Once upon a time, someone at Hasbro or Takara, one or the other, were pitching the idea of vintage horror movie monsters as Transformers. And yes, we have a Dracula on the way, but they pitched an original Dracula that looked just like, a typical human Dracula with a bat mode. They pitched the creature from the Black Lagoon as a gator, or no, as a Barracuda, now I think of it. But the weirdness there is okay, classic Universal monsters, right? But they also pitched the Fly, which is not a Universal monster, so this would have been multiple licensing to get this one series off the ground. Probably one reason why it didn't happen. Also, I'm not entirely sure how well known a lot of those are in Japan. I'm not sure they have the pop culture cred they do here in America. But it was definitely an idea. And someone designed it, and someone thought it was going to work, but never quite happened, until technically now. So who knows, we might see a Barracuda transform into the creature pretty soon. Next up, Takara shooting for the moon with a very expensive concept. When Takara was doing all of their label figures, and label figures were kind of almost like chic Transformer items. They were either very expensive licensing like Disney, or they were expensive tech gadgets. Soundwave as an actual working MP3 player back when MP3 players were not the most common things that everyone had. So they always ran a lot more expensive than other figures, but they did interesting things. But one of the ones that they never quite got off the ground were the Chrono Label set, which was going to be a throwback to the old digital Transformer watches that could transform, pop them off of the wristband and turn them into a little robot. I had one as a kid. Would have kind of loved to have another one because it's a goofy little idea. Problem is, the price point for this was going to be 30,000 yen, which was well over 300 American dollars at the time, for a transformer that fit on the side, just fit on your wrist, and just told the time. And, even then, we had these. Most people were getting cell phones at that point, so watches were already on the way out, let alone a $300 toy watch just for the novelty of it. Got canceled before it ever got released, probably for the best, because I'm not sure who would have paid out for something that expensive and that low featured. At number 7, a concept we would have gotten if Pretenders were more successful. So amongst all of the different Pretender concepts that made it a prototype, like double Pretenders, for instance, the one set that we were going to get would have been based more on Mythological Warriors, which there would have been 4 Autobot, 4 Decepticon, and they would have had names and designs that kind of invoked classic mythology. Beowulf, Marduk, Fenris, those kind of characters. We never quite got that far. Of course, Pretenders pretty much flopped. What would have been interesting about this was that they would have been some of the very rare humanoid Decepticons, not monsters, but actual, human warriors, with a robot inside. The only concept art of these that exists is what would have been the outer shell. So we don't know exactly what the inner shells would have been like or what kind of toys they would have been. This is just something that seems like if Pretenders had taken off in the first year, they were prepared to continue it with different design themes rather than, monsters and spacemen that dominated the early waves of Pretenders. This would have got more into like the kind of things that Starscream had as a shell. More in that realm. Of course, did not happen. Might have been interesting. Actually, a little bit of mythology in the characters, a little bit of historical notoriety that would have been lent to them, might have made them a little bit more interesting. We move on to a set of Transformers that we're not sure why they exist, but hey, someone seemed to have fun doing it. There are concept arts out there for fossil formers. Long before we had them in the Kingdom line, someone was planning on designing transforming fossils, which interesting. Like, there's 2 different concepts, and they're both kind of interesting. One would have been the animal trapped in either stone or ice, or the fossil trapped in stone or ice. You remove all that armor, you remove all that like debris, etc. Basically, transform the toy into a robot, and then reattach the ice and the rock to act as armor. That's why I made the slip. That's actually kind of a cool way of doing it. It's a cool idea. And then there were ones that were just fossils that turned straight into robots. And yes, that sounds like a Rock Lord. So this was from TF Raw, the one that dug this up. And apparently, according to their speculation, this might have been something they did just in case Rock Lords took off, so they had a concept to compete with that just in case. And of course, Rock Lords did not take off, so we'll never exactly know why these were designed or how they would have turned out. But kind of interesting that it took them 30-some years, but they finally got fossil toys out on the market in Transformers. Now I just need the ice armor. Where is it, Hasbro? At number 5, a concept that has already been covered a few times, but hey, in this kind of list, I can't leave it off. When they were pitching ideas for the McDonald's toys during Beast Wars, they had a lot of different concepts that they were pitching. One of them was eventually turned into the auto rollers. They just were, much smaller, of course, for a Happy Meal. But, of course, most of them were Beast concepts, and a lot of them were original characters with old names attached. And by that I mean Optimus Prime as a bat, Megatron as a gator, and that sounds familiar. There was a snapping turtle named Buzzsaw. There, things like that. And I believe Prowl made it in there as a panther. And again, their choice of simple transformation or auto rollers. So a lot of things being pitched around. When they developed this idea out further, those designs ended up becoming some of the basic Beast Wars toys we got, and then new ones were designed. Optimus Prime as a manta ray, which eventually became an actual McDonald's toy. Megatron as a sea turtle. Why didn't I get that? Or as a dragonfly. Weird stuff. So eventually that got developed into what we got for the Happy Meal toys. Simplified toys they were essentially brand new characters. But it would have been fun and interesting because, like, I would, like, you know how much as a kid I would have gone nuts if I could have gotten a turtle transformer out of a Happy Meal. I would have lost my mind. I would have been at McDonald's every day hoping that one showed up in my bag, and probably about 40 pounds heavier for it. But you know what? Might have been worth it. At number 4, a single concept design that gives me so many ideas for interesting toys. This was a concept called Motor World, or we're presuming it was called Motor World because that's what's on the design sketch. The only concept that exists for it is what is loosely called Buffalo Dump. Stop chuckling. It was called that because it was a combination of a dump truck and a buffalo. So the Motor World idea seemed to be vehicles with animal elements mixed in, which I think Buffalo Dump looks pretty freaking cool. It's the only time I'll ever say that about something I would refer to as a Buffalo Dump. And it's a shame, because like this felt like it could have been the start of something really interesting. Like, imagine if this concept continued and you worked in like rudimentary beast modes that the vehicle could also form, and played with it more like that, or full-on triple changers that were animals and beasts, or animals and vehicles. Potential there would have been huge, but we never got more than one design sketch, which is kind of a shame because, that's the kind of fresh thing that I think Transformers needs a lot more of, and it probably needed it back then too. Next up, a concept that Transformers is still trying to get right in one form or another. I've lost track of how many times Transformers has tried to break into the building block toy line with Transformers. We've had Built to Rule. We've had Creo. We have had whatever those block transforming animated toys were. I never got my hands on any of them. And now we know that was planned all the way back in the Generation 2 era with Blocktown, which would have been G2 repaints redone with little accessories that you built out of bricks, gas pumps and things like that, as a way of combining the Lego play with the Transformer play. And this was supposedly this was going to be like a big deal thing. They had like big pieces that they were planning as like the key item. They had a tractor trailer, like a semi trailer with a aircraft carrier design on top of it. Super cool looking. Would have been a ton of bricks to build it, and of course Transformers that came with it that would have been compatible. They had different size classes planned out, both for the figures and the bricks. Didn't ever make it out. The Collector Club did do an homage. One of the figures did get released as a studio or a subscription service figure with a little bit of Creo thrown in to make the concept a little bit close to the original, but we never got an actual Blocktown release, which is kind of a shame because, once again, similar to Motor World, there could have been such really interesting possibilities there. Number 2 is back to Beast Wars, because this is just a concept that, man, this would have changed a lot of things. We talked about this before in the Unused Beast Wars concept video. Go check that one out if you didn't get to see that one. But just to touch on it quickly, they were planning to have triple changers in Beast Wars. Not only does that mean more vehicular, more solid vehicles from Transmetals, but also just beast modes for extra beast modes for existing characters, like Dinobot becoming both a raptor and a snake, for instance, or Cheetor becoming a cheetah and a shark. Engineering-wise, I have no idea how you can actually accomplish those, but someone at Takara had the mental idea that maybe, just maybe, they could pull that off. And I kind of wish they had tried, because that's one of the things that they never really touched on. Beast Wars got to do, they got to do cybernetic, they got to do robotic, they got to do combiners. Triple changing is one of those classic go-to gimmicks in Transformers that Beast Wars never quite captured. Transmetals, they didn't really, the third modes really weren't vehicles. Even the best ones were just kind of loosely designed that way. And you never really had a beast triple changer. There's a couple that have things that you could call a third mode, but not really. So this one I really wish hadn't been left on the design table, because while it would have been really difficult to engineer, some of the toys that could have come out of that concept probably would have been worth the effort. And to finish us off, probably the most well-known concept that never happened, and this is just simply Transtech. We're going to talk Transtech at length later down the road, but for now, if you've never heard of it, how have you never heard of it? This was going to be the follow-up to Beast Machines. Unfortunately, Beast Machines tanked, so they never really got this far. But Transtech was supposed to be just hyper sci-fi designs, maximal characters back to vehicle modes, and just really pushing design elements in directions we had never seen. Really wild stuff. The Starscream that was designed for this line, I think, is a super cool design. I'm really disappointed it's never been seen since. And things like the Cheetor. The Cheetor is just absolutely lunatic, is what it is. And there's an actual gray prototype to prove that the concept would have worked. They actually engineered it. And if you hadn't seen the concept before, oh man, you would not believe that that thing could actually transform or work as a car, but it does. And I am so upset that never made it to production. That will never get the chance to play with such a weird thing. This is one of those things where I'm like begging third-party companies, look at it, study it, and make it. Because I know a lot of collectors, me included, would really be interested in owning something that was that unique and that special in design that we never actually got to experience. So this one is one of the few things that makes me wish Beast Machines came out a lot better. Is that I really think we lost something special with Transtech. So that's my list. And of course, there's tons of concepts, there's tons of sketches and artwork that never came to pass, but I think these are just 10 of the ones that stood out the most to me. So let me know in the comments below what other ones are out there that you're aware of, your favorite concepts that Transformers never got to have, and maybe we'll do this again sometime. But until then, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye for now. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.